Hello and welcome back to our chapter on the bureaucracy. We are on chapter 13, covering the bureaucracy, and we are on the second part. So let's go ahead and get started. I pulled out the PowerPoint to help better explain some different things. We already went through our learning outcomes. Okay, and we really looked at the uses of bureaucracy. And one thing I really want to point out when you're watching your crash course politics and government videos that I've placed on your module, they're really great videos. And I think it's like 15, 16, and 17. It really talks about how bureaucracy is necessary because there are groups of people who are specialized in that area and they really do know more about a certain, whether it's education or a certain area, education or food and drug or that sort of thing. Government employees, local, state, and federal as a percentage of the total U.S. population. That graph we looked at. The costs. It also talked about in your crash course videos that I assigned for you to watch, the ones about bureaucracy. And it is crash course U.S. history. It is actually politics and government, but it talks about how after the New Deal there was a lot of bureaucracy because the New Deal brought a lot of government programs that actually saved our country, but then it had to be cut back in different areas as the need went up or down. Okay, here's the graph that I was talking about that talks about where the spending goes. A lot of times I think that we're misinformed as to what is really eating up our tax money that we're sending, and that is really, I would just encourage you to take a really close look at that pie chart. Okay, executive departments, we talked about that as well. And here, here is the organization of Department of Agriculture. They had different ones as well. Trying to find exactly where we are. Okay. We talked about the dangers of party politics. I do want to direct your attention to page 297. It does have the year of establishment as well as, I'm trying to think if we missed that. Oh, yeah, this is table 13.1, and that is showing table 13.4. But on table 13.1, it has all of them listed, which is really, really very interesting, I think. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this up here. Okay, and so it has executive departments, and then it has, what I love is it has the year that it was established. So there was a need for it at that particular time. And then it has, what it's called and its principal duties and selected sub-agencies underneath it. So we have the Department of State, Department of Treasury, Defense, Justice, Interior, Agriculture, Commerce, Labor, Health and Human Services, Housing and Urban Development, Transportation, Energy, Education, Veteran Affairs, and Homeland Security, which was the newest one added in 2002 by the Bush administration. I want to look at Justice. The Department of Justice actually houses the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Drug Enforcement, Bureau of Prisons, U.S. Marshal Services. So you can just see what's underneath each of these, and it is really interesting as we're studying. Okay, let's continue with the PowerPoint. Oopsie. Okay. Okay. Facing loss. This is a huge problem, and I'm not sure which slide this is, but facing loss, a private business fails to make a profit, its shareholders have a problem, it may close its doors. If a government corporation runs at a loss, taxpayers are forced to fit the bill. And it talks about which ones are, running at a loss and why, and that sort of thing. Okay. I think something that is really interesting is brought up in the civil service portion of your book on page 300 and 301. Civil service is non-military government employees. just, the merit system and, a lot of times bureaucracies don't have the same reward system, and it kind of stifles it, and stifles the workers because they have nowhere to go. It does have some things about the idea that the civil service should be based on a merit system dates back to more than a century. And, you know, um, initially only about 10% of federal employees were covered by the merit system. And I think that's really important. Now it says more than 90% of the federal civil service is recruited on the merit basis. You know, what are we paying government employees? Why are we paying them for a good job well done? I was having this discussion with someone else who's majoring in political science, and they were talking about, if a mailman has two routes, he may have just two routes, and it doesn't matter if he gets them done fast or if he gets them done slowly, if he only has two routes. So, putting these merit systems and these reward systems in place, really, everyone needs incentives. I don't care if you're 5 years old or 95 years old. Just as a teacher, I just was amazed, what students will do for an encouraging email or a gold star. I just remember in college, I was a junior in college, and if you got everything right on the geography test, which you had to know every single country in the world, you had to know where the capital was, you got a gold star. And you wouldn't believe what we would do for those gold stars just because we want that reward. So, having those things in place really helps government employees. I think that, you need to have things in place. You can't just put the blame on the government employee. The structure is flawed as well, because people do like rewards. And I will say, as a public school teacher, that was something that I really struggled with, because I always felt like I tried to be a better teacher than I was the year before, but there was no incentive to do messy projects or to, one project that I did was I had the kids in 7th grade dig up artifacts. I would put them in these huge bins, and I would put cat litter in them, because then I could use the cat litter later because I had a cat. But there was no reward for making a huge mess of my room, making a huge mess of my garage in order to do this really awesome hands-on activity that was fantastic for my at-risk students. And I did it for me. But it was tiring, and how many of those could I do, and and that sort of thing. And there was a lot of outside reward systems. Other people wanted to observe, or there was a journalist who said if I taught the next year, which I didn't because I had a baby, a beautiful baby boy, but he said, I want to come and take pictures, and I want you to try it outside. But those incentives really help teachers, which is part of the bureaucracy, those rewards. And I know the Cincinnati public school system had talked about giving bonuses, even small, $20, because usually that doesn't even cover the cost it takes to have a great lesson. But you know what, that incentive of maybe a $20 gift certificate to Applebee's or something like that would make it some sort of incentive to improve. And that is kind of the problem in bureaucracies. Anyway, rabbit trail, but a good one. Okay, how bureaucrats get their jobs. Talks about different test taking, and that sort of thing. I'm talking too quickly. A Civil Service Reform Act of 1883, I think that civil service jobs still need to be revamped in order to make the most of these people in the government. Not to make them work harder, but to give them some reward to work toward. I know in the business sector, a lot of times you get reward trips. I know I've been on several of them with different friends. And so those reward trips really give incentive to people to give their best. And I just think human nature, that is needed. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, some more selected government corporations. All right, why isn't it going down? Oh, I'm going up, that's why. All right. Regulatory agencies are the fourth branch of the government. Rulemaking, policymaking, issue networks, agency creation. All right, it takes a lot of money to make up the rules, and then it takes a lot more money to make sure people are enforcing those rules. Okay, the iron triangle, which they did speak about, who belongs to the iron triangle. Determined that one way to understand the bureaucracy's role in policymaking is to examine the iron triangle. Three-way alliance among legislators, members of Congress, bureaucrats, and interest groups. Laws that are passed and policies that are established benefit the interests of the three corners of the iron triangle. And of course, if you look at the definition, a three-way alliance among legislators, bureaucrats, and interest groups to make or preserve policies that benefit their respective interests. Here it is. Okay, trying to get away from that it's, good for everyone. Issue networks, curbing wastes is definitely issue network. Okay. Curbing waste and improving efficiency. It's really, something that needs to happen more in the bureaucracy. All right. There is no doubt that our bureaucracy is costly, okay, and the more it can be improved, the lower the cost for taxpayers. First term you have is helping out the whistleblowers. In the context of government employment, someone who blows the whistle is someone who reports to authorities or the press on a gross governmental efficiency, illegal action, and or wrongdoing. You have to protect those people or you're not going to hear what's being abused. All right. Also on page 307, it talks about how President Obama has a contribution to the attempt to improve government effectiveness was to create a chief performance officer. This individual reports directly to the president and works with other economic officials in an attempt to increase efficiency and eliminate waste in the government. So, there are, presidents that are trying to implement this and put this in place. Okay. All right, here's another problem. About 1/3 of the major firms in this country use a kind of alternate pay system, such as team-based pay, skill-based pay, profit sharing, or individual bonuses. And that's what I'm saying, that bonus or that privilege. I remember I had a principal in Genius. He didn't have more money to give us, but we improved test scores. We worked super hard in an inner city school. And he said, you know what, I can't pay you, but what I can do is when it is your planning period and it is payday, and we had payday twice a month, you may go wherever you like. He said off campus, which normally you weren't allowed to do. And I just want to say that was like such a huge bonus that was free, because I was allowed to, as long as I let him know and signed out, working inner city, I could go to the local coffee shop and read my paper, and that was my reward. And every human being needs that reward system. And I think sometimes we're too hard on government employees because there isn't that bonus or reward system in place. And there's so many intelligent people in the United States. Surely there's a way to fix that is, cost effective. But that principal, Mr. Ritter, we loved it. It was fantastic. My planning was very early in the morning, so I was thrilled because I could go drink my coffee in silence and not hear any 7th graders for just 1 hour. And, people who had it at lunchtime or closer to lunchtime could go and eat a lunch in quiet. Okay, we talked about privatization and how that can be a good thing and a bad thing. If you do some, investigation, privatization of different, groups that went to Afghanistan or privatization in Iraq, there was a lot of corruption, and that's another problem of privatization. Okay, it talks about e-fraud, trying to put documents, e-tax documents. You have to be very careful because even, if you're married and your husband files taxes, it says that they're supposed to show them to the wife, or if the wife files taxes, there can, or someone can steal your information. Is this, are they doing what they're supposed to? Very interesting.